You can utilize your time better through marketing, networking, and doing those things, which is how my business exploded, was just because of my networking with someone
Yeah.
who retired. And I got all those referral sources. I got all of that business. And I think in a month's time, we gained like 50 visits in a month.
Hello, and welcome to the Private Practice Owners Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Robin, and today it's our Client of the Month episode. Well, ex-client of the month. Miss Tonya's here. Tonya is in Colorado. She's a practice owner. She's been a practice owner for 5 years. Actually, in February will be 5 years. She is the owner of Dynamic Mobility and Balance Center. And today we're just going to learn about Tonya, what her story is. She's done some incredible things over the past year. And we're gonna try to get inside her brain and put it on a PowerPoint for everybody to steal. How about that? Tanya, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So how long have you listened to the podcast?
I have, yes.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? Like listening to the podcast for so long and then now you're on the podcast.
And now you're on it. Yeah, that seems a little crazy to me for sure.
And it really, I have these conversations with people, like I get on the phone with them, like practice owners and stuff. And a lot of them tell me like, it's like I'm having a conversation with the podcast. Like the podcast is talking back to me because they listen to the podcast so much.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because so many people that we've worked with have come from that podcast. Like they've been listening to the podcast for over a year. They knew they were going to get, they knew they had to do something and they just kept listening and listening and listening. And then finally they got on a call and that's all she wrote. So
Yeah. Great
today
information.
yeah, I'd love to hear your story. Like tell me, if you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself, tell people like who you are, where you're from. And if you don't mind, like just kind of tell me a little bit about what got you into PT and then like what got you into business.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, I actually graduated from PT school back in 2001, so I've been a long time PT now. I got into PT school because when I was in undergrad, I was dating a guy, and I kind of was lost on what I wanted to do with my life, and asked him one day, "How did you know what you wanted to do?" And he said, "Oh, I've always loved airplanes, blah blah blah." Knew he wanted to go into aerospace engineering. He said, "What do you like to do?" I said, "I love to run. I love to go to the gym. I love to play softball." And he said, "You should be a PT." So I actually
Mm,
started looking into PT, and my grades at the time weren't great enough to get in. It was really super competitive. And so I got my degree, decided I didn't want to go to PT school right then. I became a school teacher and took 1 year of teaching school for me to realize that was not the career for me. And so that's when I decided to start applying to PT schools. And luckily I got in. So graduated in 2001, worked for 3 years in the skilled nursing, did a little home health, went into a hospital based outpatient neuro practice, primarily because I wanted to do ortho. And I thought that would be a good way to get my foot in the door at this hospital system that had an amazing ortho group. And my first day at a contract job in the neuro outpatient, I sort of fell in love with neuro. And so that's been my world ever since. And was there for 9 years. They were a nonprofit, partnered with a for profit company, which kind of changed everything. A lot of people left, and I got offered a job in Colorado. So that hospital system was in Dallas. Lived there for most of my life. Decided to take a chance at this job in Colorado, moved out here, and started working for them. They closed most of their practices 2 years later. I kind of bounced around to a couple of other places and finally just decided that after 20 plus years of saying I will never open my own practice, decided that I would give it a try after talking to a friend of mine who owned a practice. And yeah, opened my business in February 2020.
mm. Yeah, great timing, huh?
Yeah, 6 weeks before COVID shut the world down.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast episode on that. Uh yeah, that's nuts. So I'd like to ask you one clarifying question, just
Sure.
because I'm curious. Tell me what 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 was it about neuro that caused you to fall in love with it? What was it?
Ye- Well, there are no protocols. And so you have to be really creative in your thinking. You really are looking at truly function, and it's really rewarding when you get somebody who can't walk after a severe neurological injury and you get them walking again or you get them moving again. And I specialize in treating vestibular therapy and, having patients who are dizzy for months on end and come in and then, their dizziness is gone. And I found it very, very rewarding for me. I still love, doing a lot of athlete work, but ortho's just not my background anymore.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's no protocols. That's like another way of saying there's no rules, right?
Yeah.
And you strike me as a rule breaker, not a rule follower. So I'm wondering if, and obviously you love adventure, like you moved all the way from Texas to Colorado. You ain't
Hmm.
scared to go on an adventure. You ain't, and we know each other well enough by now.
Right.
Like I know, like you're kind of a go getter. You'd like to jump in the deep end and start swimming. So it seems like that aligns with you really well. Like just the idea of like going on a journey with patients and just like let me put on my creative brain and just like we're gonna figure this out.
Yeah, I like you could have two people with a stroke in the exact same area of the brain and they'll present completely differently. And I think that's what was so interesting to me was really having to, think what am I going to do with this person? How do I get them better? And really diving into those skills and doing everything in your power to give this person the best life they can have.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then you said, well, you had this idea. I will never own my own company or my own practice.
Yeah.
Why?
Honestly, I just didn't want to deal with insurance. Still don't.
Yeah, me neither.
Um, I thought it was a lot of work. And in all honesty, it is a lot of work, but I think I was scared, to be honest, that I think probably a failure um, of that, inability to make a living of it. So yeah, it was just something I honestly thought I would be a general therapist my whole life and never specialized too. So, things change as you get this many years into practice.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely can resonate with that fear of failure. Sometimes it's just more comfortable, but you did not display that during our time working together. I mean, I would say that it might be perhaps one of the biggest reasons why, and I don't know if it's fear of failure, but like one of the defining characteristics between owners in our program that do well, that make progress, and those that just kind of stagnate is they fear. Like, are you willing to lean into the fear or not?
Right.
That's really like all of it's scary. Like opening the clinic scary, having to look at your numbers is scary, having to hope that the money's there at the end of the month, that's scary. Having to hire people is scary, having to invest is scary, having to hold people accountable is scary. Having to delegate and let people go without micromanaging them is scary. It's all scary. You know what
Right.
I mean? And it's like
Right.
these little wins, like all these little wins that add up because that's really the game. Like, how can I like lean into that fear and just be like, hey, I'm gonna try something different, you know?
Well, and I had I'll say this. I have a friend who owns a PT practice, and I remember going to him and saying, "Look, I think I'm going to do this. What do I do?" And he kind of helped me through. And I said, "Well, what if it doesn't work?" And he goes, "Well, what if it doesn't? What are you going to do?" I was like, "Well, I'll have to go back to work." And he's like, "Right, you're going to be doing the same thing that you're doing right now.
God, that's
So
such good
so what
advice.
if it so what if it fails? You're just going to go back to where you are now. But what if it doesn't?" And I think that was the other thing that to go to the coaching piece that when I got into coaching, it was, that kind of push that it's okay to do this and it's okay to do that. And here's you're going to be okay if you hire another therapist, which was one of
Mhm.
the first time I hired my first PT was just terrifying. I'm not going to have
Mhm.
money to pay this poor person's salary. What am I going to
Mhm.
do? And I'd had a couple of front desk people that I couldn't afford prior to that. But, looking at the difference between a revenue generator and one that's not, once I took that leap, it was like the best thing I did.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. Fear of failure is big. Fear of failure is a big one. There is an exercise like, well, the one thing that came to mind is like, it's not, it, for me, it's like the mindset shift for me has always been stop focusing on like, what if I don't achieve the outcome? And to me, what's more scary is like, what if you never truly live the life that you want, that you really want to live? Like, what if you just stay a
Yeah.
coward your whole life? You know what I mean? Like, screw that. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? I feel like
Right.
that's way worse. At the end of the day, like if you had to map it out, like if you're like, you know, entering the world and God's like, you can choose this life of adventure and you might fail, but you're gonna like really go all in for what you really want. Or you can choose this life and you're just gonna like play it safe and kind of like pretend like you don't really want it and tell people you don't really want it because you just want to preserve your comfort. Which one do you want to do? Like everybody would choose that one. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, so we know what we should. That's why I love the idea of coaching because it's like you know what you should do most of the time, but it's really just having that one person who's on the outside looking in saying like, no, wait a minute. Remember you chose this, right? Like
Hmm.
you should like this totally aligns with your vision. So like
Right.
you should go for it, you know? And it's really that. It's really that's and then you
Yeah.
give yourself some tools and some like some clarity around some things and it's like, okay, and then you take action.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, kind of going into the business side of things, I remember thinking, I don't like the way this person does this. I don't like the way this boss is. I don't like the way they do this. I do it better, and that kind of pushed me in that realm too. So, right. I don't know that I could ever go back to working for somebody. It would be hard.
Now what you know now, you know too much.
Right. Right.
There
I've got that tunnel vision to retirement at this point.
you go. I'm so glad you did it because I feel like just like the world's a better place, you know, like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, you know,
Right.
and you're helping these PTs find an amazing career, right? Like, so there's like so many upsides to it. I do want to get back to the business stuff. We mentioned that you've been in business. February will be 5 years, and when we met, that was a little over a year ago.
Right.
We had our first phone call, and I'm kind of remembering back then, and I remember I think you had like a part-time front desk person,
Right.
and you were basically just working. You were doing all just treating full time, like you were working 40 hours a week, and there was no other people on your team.
Correct. I was treating full time. I was doing the desk part time. Yeah, I was pretty much doing everything.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about you then. Like, what was the story around just the way you viewed things, like what your day to day was like what your strategy was then? What was that like?
Yeah, my strategy was just treat, treat, treat. And I knew I needed help. I knew I needed another therapist. And I had in my brain that I just needed to get a part-time therapist because when you look at your bank account, which is how I spent a lot of my first few years, was basing all my decisions on the balance in my bank account. Um, when you look at that and you're like, wow, I don't have the money to pay a salary of somebody full time, it your brain goes to a totally different place. And so I was looking for a part-time therapist at that time. I can remember, even trying to find somebody who was PRN, but full time was never something that I would have considered at that point until we started talking. And you said, just do it, more or less. You're not going to regret it. And I haven't, as a matter of fact, I'm doing his 1 year annual review this week. So
Good for you. Good for you.
yeah. And I've hired a second PT now, and same kind of situation. I look at my bank account and I think, wow, am I going to have enough money to pay this person? But then I know too that another PT is just going to bring in more patients. I'm going to have more people that can get on the schedule, and they're revenue generators. So why wouldn't you?
This is a really important topic because I would say the majority of our audience is smaller practice owners,
Mhm.
and here's the mistake we make. It's the same one made. It's the same one I made. It's the same one Nathan made. It's that we think that when it's just us and a front desk person, we think our job is to make money so that then we can decide what decisions we make. And that's not that's not the goal. That's not the goal for a long time. You're
Mhm.
not supposed to make money when you're by yourself and you have one front desk person and you have you're not, I don't want you to make money. I want the business to have the money. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you're not ready to pull the money from the business yet. So really the job for you in the beginning is to learn. And really it's how do I create way more
Right.
value for my patients and for my team and for my
Right.
business. How do I turn my business into this machine, this operationally sound machine? And I
Mhm.
work on the thing to bring the value of it up. Then I make money, right?
Right.
Right. So
Right.
you have to, so that's the thing. And I very much recommend, and depending on what your vision is, like if your vision is to open 10 clinics, you're not going to make money for the first five,
Right.
and if your vision is to hire five therapists, you're not going to make money for the first two or three. Like,
Mhm.
it all goes back into the business. You're going to have a small salary. You're going to live very comfortably. But you're not going to Disney World 3 times a year. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So I'm hoping that maybe the listeners can to just take that as like, that's not your money yet. It's the
Well,
business.
I think when you're by yourself, like I was the first 2 years, because it was the middle of COVID, um, I had money, because it was just me. I could, there wasn't really that much expense. There wasn't very much at all. But also, I knew that if I took a vacation, I don't make money. The business
Mm,
doesn't make money, right? And I know that for every time I needed to take 3 hours to work on the business,
right.
that there was no revenue coming into the business. And so that's where you start thinking about, if I had a therapist working here, I could work on the business, they can work in the business, and then the business starts to see something. And you're right. I mean, profits, even I'm 5 years coming in and my profits are still very low. Um, but yeah, it's changing. My mindset is
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the first therapist pays the bills,
Right.
right? And the second therapist, you start to make some money. You know what I mean? Like you really need at least two, to
Yeah.
be honest, to have a comfortable, and then you can work 2 or 3 days a week and have a very comfortable lifestyle at that point, you know? Um, but yeah, it's just a really good point. Like being able to create something that makes money for you while you're not there, you know?
Right.
So so you got into coaching, right?
I did. Yes.
You knew you needed some help. What were some of the reasons why you felt like, I know you might have hinted on some, but like what were the top reasons why you felt like you needed, I know I need some help.
Well, I'm trained as a clinician, not as a somebody that knows anything about business. So my biggest thing was I needed direction. I needed to understand money. Um, and I needed to know like how to build it. That was the thing that I didn't feel like in my own brain I had any direction on how
Mm.
a business is supposed to work. I just kind of was like, yeah, sure, I'll do this. Opened it up and just went with it. Like I said, I used to live by what my bank account balance was.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
you can't make business decisions that way.
Yeah. So that's why I always think that education is such a big component of
Right.
of any type of coaching program, whether it's books or online webinars or whatever, because when you educate, and it's an investment back in yourself,
Right.
right? You're deciding that like, hey, I have to like step away and I have to block out some time to dedicate to pouring into myself. And that's the thing that gives you perspective. Like, oh, I can see the lights are turning on. I can see the business a little cleaner. I'm starting to think a little differently about what might be possible for me. Right.
Right.
So education is so important. And then once you became oriented, then you can start creating a vision, right? Then you can start
Right.
seeing like, oh wow, I can see where I'm going a little bit, right?
Right.
Starting having some more clarity. And then it's really about, okay, like how do I overcome all the fears and all the insecurities that I have on the way? And that's what the coach helps you with.
Absolutely. I mean, I tell you, there was a lot that coaching helped me with in terms of, taking time out of my schedule and, spending time, doing business work. And that was hard sometimes for the staff to understand that, hey, Tuesdays, I don't see patients. You don't put
Mhm.
anybody on my schedule. I'm working on Tuesdays. Um, and that was a hard concept for me to accept in the beginning, but then when I
Some more
started
fear, huh?
doing it, now because I have a new PT starting in 2 weeks or a week and a half, but up until this point my schedule's been getting more and more full because we're so busy, and I'm just upset that I don't have that time now to get the work done,
Now that's when you should start getting nervous. Not
right,
That's when you should like get nervous when you're running out of time. You know what I
right,
mean? Because if you have time, you can make money. You just got to get, you know what I mean? Like you just need some time.
right. Right. But
And that,
I'm tired of like 5 a.m. wake up on the computer,
yeah,
done at 7 o'clock at night. I get an hour and a half with my spouse, and then, I'm too tired to stay awake after 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm ready to go back to bed. I mean, ready to go to bed. So, it's very hard to live that life. And I can see where that's an easy burnout route. That's
very
the
easy.
road. That's the road to burnout, no doubt.
And we lie to ourselves and we think, oh, if I just keep on working,
Yeah.
I'm gonna save up some money and then I'm gonna be ready. And then it's just like this,
Doesn't
it never
happen.
happens,
Right.
right? It just never happens. Um, I wrote down time versus money. Have you read Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time?
I have started that book. I have not finished it.
Well, I'm gonna give a plug to Dan Martell. It's
Yeah,
transformed the way I think about time. It's a
right.
fantastic book, but it just goes back to really there's never gonna be a shortage of problems you have to solve in your business.
Right.
You're always gonna have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you didn't have problems, you wouldn't be in business because your business is there to solve problems. So, like, yay, we have problems. You really have to decide what problem do you want to solve? Do you want to solve the problem of I have no time, no life, no relationships, no health, no purpose,
Mm-hmm.
no fulfillment? If do you want to solve that problem so that you can just decide, I'm going to solve the problem of how do I get this freaking clinic busier so I can make some more money? Like, I'd
Mm-hmm.
much rather solve that problem and live a
Right.
life that I love, right? Than just
Right.
stick to this thing and like I'm gonna try to make some money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's just the
Yeah.
wrong game to play.
Yeah. And you make yourself crazy.
That's right. So it's really this game of like, how do I get more time?
Mm-hmm.
How do I create more structure, empower more people,
Mm-hmm.
create more organization, put the right people in the right place with the right culture
Right.
so that I free myself up so that I can focus on growth.
Yeah. And
Because I'm the
delegation.
and right.
Delegation.
And then what happened? Like once you started getting some time, like you start your clinic grew, right? Like everybody got their schedule full.
Right. And it's amazing that even when you have time during the day, your time is still being used. I mean, you have things to do all the time. It's just that you're not having to do them first thing in the morning and at the end of the day. And you can actually get business done during business hours, even though we all work a little bit later and a little bit earlier. But yeah, then you can utilize your time better through marketing, networking, and doing those things, which is how my business exploded, was just because of my networking with someone
Yeah.
who retired. And I got all those referral sources. I got all of that business, and my I think in a month's time, I went we gained like 50 visits in a month
Yeah, it's awesome.
after she retired, and that was awesome. It was, and I'm not complaining ever, but boy, that's been very overwhelming
Yeah.
to go from
So,
being steady and then suddenly now I've got 50 new visits
yeah.
and no PT
Yeah.
to cover them except me.
Yeah. Back to solving that problem again. We've already solved this problem though, right? Like we already know what we got to do to solve this problem. We've already done it once, you
Right,
know? And so then it's like, okay, how do I solve it, but never have to come back to this again?
right,
Right. So like now we solve it just a little better this time. And
right.
then you start creating some layers between you. Maybe you have a PRN list, or I have a PTA on the side that works part-time that can float, or right. You can create, because eventually the little bit of extra payroll expense is worth the stability of your time, because you could focus on just like driving revenue, which
Yeah,
is what you want to be, right? You're the
yeah.
revenue driver.
Well, and I think I'll go back to the coaching, and then at the private practice owners conference that was just recently, and talking about hiring. And the one thing that you guys had taught me that I had never thought about was you should continually hire.
Mhm.
Instead of hiring somebody and then that's it. The job description goes out the door. I'm not going to worry about it, until suddenly now I need a new PT or a new therapist. And, you guys were talking about you should just constantly build that network of therapists out there that want to work for you. And so that when you do need something, then you have this list that you can start going into and, trying to find somebody that's interested in coming in before it gets to the point where we were.
Yeah.
With suddenly now we have 50 visits and no PT. And so that's my mind is completely different in looking at hiring, in that, I keep this list of people that potentially could be employees at some point.
Yeah. And it's just relationships, right?
Right. Right.
Like I think we get stuck in like, it's a transactional thing with employees. Like you work for me and I pay you a check and you go home. But that's
Right.
not, it shouldn't be that. It should be like, we're colleagues, and we support each other. So like your interview process doesn't have to be like, all right, tell me what your biggest weakness is. Like that
Right.
stuff's old, like and outdated. Like it could just be like, hey, Tonya, what's up? Like, how are you? Like, tell me more about you. Like, let's just get to know each other. you know,
Yeah.
what are your goals? And like, you have kids? Like, it's really nice to meet you. We should collaborate on some things. Let's be friends.
Right.
And
Right.
if you can get like 30 of those, and you know, when it's time to hire people, you have a network to dive into to be like, hey, I don't have to generate a bunch of leads from just a cold audience anymore. Like I've got these warmed up people who already know, like, and trust me, who know me. I know their goals. I know what they're into. There's a lot of trust built already. So like they're ready to go, you know?
Right.
So that's
Right.
fantastic. And the other thing is, just to give you another thing to think about, is you don't like there are different levels of aggression with recruiting, right? So
Hmm.
like if I need a PT right now, then I have the I need a PT right now protocol, right?
Right.
But if I don't need a PT right now, but I do need a few more people on the bench, then maybe the protocol is a little different, right? Maybe we don't do as many interviews, but we do some phone screens and we do some Zoom calls, but we don't do the full onboarding process. right?
Right.
And you kind of keep
Right.
that running on a low level. That takes a little bit of time just to kind of keep things primed,
Right.
you
Right.
know. So that's awesome. So you hired your PT. Now we had some issues with what's his name? Your
My
PT.
PT,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Andrew. Not with Andrew specifically, but like that was your first time hiring a PT, right?
Right.
And you had to delegate some patients and
Yeah.
you had to teach him some stuff and like you had to let go of some things and talk to us about that. Like what were some of the challenges you had there?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest challenges whenever you are cutting back on your schedule is that all the patients are like, wait, I only want to see you. I only want to see you. And, I had to literally start going out to doctors who were referring to Tonya Fuller and tell them like, I need you to refer to my clinic and not refer to me as a person, because then everybody's always asking for me. So that was a challenge in the beginning, and just getting people, and he was a new grad. He'd only been out of school for about 6 months. And I put that on the website, which if you're a business owner and you have your team on the website with their graduation dates, a lot of people get bothered by that too. Like, oh, I want the one with the most
Yeah,
experience,
with the
and
30,
so
20 years of experience.
well, exactly. So I took everything about the team off of the website.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest challenge is people being willing to let go of me as their therapist. And and training, he didn't know as much as he still doesn't know as much as I do in terms of experience and things like that. So, ongoing training and things that, being open for questions and, sitting down and having these sessions where we talk about, you know, a particular diagnosis or a particular type of treatment, and how would we take care of this, and so it's still a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end. But yeah, those were the primary problems, I think, in the beginning.
Yeah, as you grow your company and as you elevate yourself on the org board, it's fun to experience that transition to where like your patients are no longer your primary focus. Like they're not your patients anymore.
Hmm.
Your patients are really your team, right? Like
Right.
now you're like, okay, like what's Andrew's plan of care and how do I help him? How do I help him create more value in his life? And the same energy, if you will, that you had towards those neuro patients, how you really wanted to transform their life. You just take that and you copy it and you paste it into Andrew, and then you create a new purpose for people, right?
Right.
And so that's when you really become more of a coach of your team, and that's really fun. That's really more and more of
Yeah.
your time will be spent doing that, and then eventually you'll have leaders who will do that for you. But that's when it's really fun when you can start seeing that change in Andrew. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's been great. I'm telling you. There's been a big transition in a year.
Good for
So
him,
it's been
man.
good.
Good for him.
Yeah.
So you have filled up your clinic, you're full, and you're ready to hire another PT. You're going in,
Hmm.
it's 2025 is coming up. So what is your vision for 2025 now? Like what do you see coming down the pipe for you?
So one thing that we are doing is we're moving to a bigger space.
Oh
So
wow, good for you.
yeah, that's happening probably in February. It's the same uh, landlord, so we're just moving into a different space with the same group, about 1,000 square feet more.
Ooh,
So
good.
I have this new therapist starting in a week and a half. So that would have two therapists then. And I'm hoping that after the first of the year, I'll have a third therapist come on, so that will open more time for me to market and build. In 2025, I'm bringing in cash-based options for additional revenue, because insurance is just you can't build a business on insurance, quite frankly. You're certainly not going to make any revenue. So we're bringing in some different cash-based options into the practice so that we can build that way. And then, you know, it won't be 2025, but somewhere down the line, I'd like to get one more practice open. I don't want to, personally, I don't want to build bigger than two. Maybe there will be three in my future, but, um, I kind of see myself 10 years moving out.
That's so awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
so
I got a
incredible.
10-year plan.
Well, you definitely have a vision now, and it's just really rewarding to hear like where you've come. And it's like,
Yeah.
like being by yourself with a part-time to, you're going to have three PTs in a new building. It's just so awesome. And
Yeah.
all because you know what I mean? Like you just committed to yourself.
Yeah. It's still kind of surreal for me to
Awesome.
realize where I was a year ago and where I am now.
So I've got,
But there's,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, there's so much more growth that can be.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I also think I mean, obviously, I know your margins are thin, and um, I think you're going to be in a much better financial position once you have that third PT start with you and you get that person full and you'll be there, especially now that you know how to run a profitable model. The thing is, like, when you scale your business, your cost per visit will scale down
Yeah.
because you don't have to pay two rents. You don't have to pay two, right? So you'll have a good base to build off your cash pay stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did Nathan's PT Profits program, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think that also is something that was really beneficial for me in terms of, looking at the finances and understanding what's affordable, what's not, and, deciding like where is the where's the area that I can grow that revenue and things like that. And, I think by doing that and getting everybody on board, which is, a challenge in and of itself sometimes, um, I think that, yeah, you could see some really big change, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah,
So I've got two more questions.
sure.
My first question is, I have probably like 10 conversations going on my phone of small practice owners who just need some advice, who want to get it, who want to grow their clinic. They're not really quite ready for coaching or anything, but they just need some advice. What is some advice you'd give them that, one or two pieces of advice that you'd give them to really get the most out of their practice over the next year?
So, my number one piece of advice would be don't be afraid to take the chance. If it's something that you're thinking about, you do it, especially when it comes to hiring. Like I said, I was that person that was like, I can't afford somebody full time and I only want part time and PRN and it was the best thing I could have done to hire somebody full time. So that would be the one thing I would say. Don't be afraid to take that chance. And dream big. I'm a
Yeah.
visionary. I'm a visionary. So, I have up in front of me, on a whiteboard, like what my goals are. And I'm the person that doesn't do so well at doing all the details to get there. But, be a visionary, dream big and, go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that people, it's hard to see what's possible,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to see it because you've never been there before. You know what I mean? And I had a mentor of mine that said, if you want to start seeing what's truly possible, you have to start hanging out around with people who have been there, right?
Right.
So then you can start to see it. Once they can see it for you and they can speak it and show you, like, look, it's right there. You see it. Then you can start to see it, and then you can be ready to go. Yeah, because it's going to take a chance. Like, you're going to have to take a leap. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can't see it.
Yeah.
and, and
I had I'm a former long distance triathlete and I had a coach and I remember him when I did my first Ironman, he asked me, what my expected time was. And I was like, oh, I just want to finish. And he's like, no, 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 you have a time in
Hmm.
mind.
Hmm.
And I was
Hmm.
like, no, 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 I just want to finish. He goes, nope, everybody has a time in mind. So I told him, I would like to finish in this time. But I think him saying that to me, it kind of poured over into what I'm doing now, in that, yeah, it is hard to see the future, but you have in your head, when you start that business, an idea of what you want that
Yeah, yeah,
business
yeah.
to look like. And I think if you take that desire of, here's what I want my business to look like, and you put that on the board up in front of you, like I do my
Just
whiteboard,
write
I'm
it down,
sitting
even if it's
right in
scary.
front of my
Yeah,
desk,
yeah, yeah,
and you say to yourself, this is what I'm going to do. It's not, this is, you change that mindset from, yeah, this is what I want to do, but to, this is what I'm going to do.
yeah. This is
This
who I
is
am.
this is my goal,
Right,
and I'm
right.
going to go for
I love that. I think that's awesome. I think that's great advice, by the way.
it.
Um, I'm assuming you've read a few books over the last year. Have you
Well,
had
yeah,
time?
I've at least started a few books. Yeah.
So tell me, tell me one book recommendation, even if you haven't started it. What would be the one book or the one thing that you've read in a book that made the biggest impact for you over the last year?
Probably Traction. Yeah. Traction, it really does kind of break down like the running of the business, like from start to finish, and how everything should work. And it kind of, I felt that was a really good direction book. Like, it helped me start, like, here's where the start is, here's where your vision is, here's the next step from there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would
that's a
be,
really good, like, it's like a textbook, you
yeah,
know?
it
It's
is.
kind of a book where it's like, read 10 pages, put it down, implement something. Read 10
Right,
pages, put it down, implement something. And just do that for the whole book. It's not that long of a read.
right.
Yeah, that's a great book. Fantastic book. Tanya, I so appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. I know you're in the Facebook group. Um, I would love to see pictures of your new place. You should post
Oh,
them in
yeah.
post them in the Facebook group. We definitely want to see it. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, somebody might be inspired by your story. Maybe a new grad wants to work for you, right? How would they get in touch with you?
They can email me. That's probably the best way, at Tonya, Tonya, at dynamicmobilitypt.com.
All right, Tanya, I really appreciate it. Let's do this again next year at this time.
Yeah, sounds great, Adam. I love it.
Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.